host for today's half hour with a friend of the family. With us today, we have the star of the show, Jake Lacy. Jake has earned acclaim for playing Robert Berchtold, a man who ingratiated himself into the life of the Broberg family, only to twice kidnap their young daughter. Jake, perhaps you can give a better description of the show in your own words.
Sure. It's a 9-part limited series that covers the tragic and harrowing experience that the Brobergs went through, really at the hands of Robert Berchtold. He befriended their family in 1970s Pocatello, Idaho, and was a seemingly, good neighbor, churchgoer, upstanding citizen, caring father, and beneath all that is actually a manipulative, sociopathic pedophile who was obsessed with their daughter Jan, and twice abducted her and essentially got away with it. And so our show covers about 5 years of their turmoil and their attempts and unsuccess to get their daughter back and to extract themselves from his grasp.
Well, before we go any further, why don't we take a look at the trailer?
What exactly is your relationship with Robert Berchtold?
Well, he's practically a member of the family.
Good morning, Brobergs.
Good morning, Brother B.
Good morning, Jan. It's gonna be a great day. Hey, who do you love the most?
Brother B. Brother B. Brother B.
Tell you the truth, a man like you, a father and a church leader, I wanted to be friends with you from the moment I met you.
Really?
I almost feel like we're two sides of the same family. I look at you and Marianne, and sometimes I wish I had the kind of marriage you have. If you really care about me, Broberg, just help me out, brother.
No one thinks that their best friend is a monster, but he has all the hallmarks of a psychopathic personality.
Happy birthday, Jan.
Robert Berchtold doesn't feel emotions the way that we do. He will lie and manipulate to get the only thing that he wants.
You remember what I told you? Lacy, you are special.
Who is her father? Him or me?
Gail, if you knew something, you would tell us, right?
Your husband kidnapped her.
Again! Where is Jan? Where is she?
There's no telling what he is capable of.
It's such a shocking story, and I know it shocked the world when it happened, and it was covered in the 2017 documentary Abducted in Plain Sight. Do you recall how you first became aware of this story?
Yeah, I saw that documentary, and when this project came about, I didn't put two and two together initially that this was the same story or retelling of it. The response from the Brobergs to the documentary was they were surprised when the public response was to shame the parents, to condemn Marianne and Bob, who certainly have their faults and their missteps in this, but I think maybe what was lost was sort of how you can wind up in a place where you are making choices against your best interests, how someone can insert themselves into your family and start to toy with your reality and sort of foundational understanding of your world by just degrees, but over the course of 2 or 3 years, get you to a place where you don't know what to think and you don't know what to trust. And so I think Nick and Tosca, who created and executive produced this series, and Jan, who this happened to, who also produced this series, really wanted to take this opportunity to say, to tell that story from the inside of the family's experience and say, what is that like? instead of just being in judgment of that, to say like, well, I would never do that. I'd never let my daughter spend time with this person, or I'd see the red flags, or I'd know, the truth is you don't, when you're being conned by someone like this. And so that was their interest, was rather than just sort of rehashing, here's the facts, here's the timeline, was to say like, how do you get to a spot where you're making choices against your own best interests?
I mean, I admit it, when I first heard, I don't want to say the premise because it's a true story, but when, I heard about this case, I was very judgmental. And one of the things that I think is so fantastic about the series is it does show you that this really could happen to anyone, and, that they were victims too.
Yeah, I think, Jan is clear, and I think the show says this as well, that it's not just the victim who is gaslit and coerced, that there's like a gaslighting, manipulation of the individual, of the family, of the entire community, to, on behalf of the perpetrator, to create this facade, this level of trust from the community and the family, so as to be able to kind of do whatever they want, or get the thing they're after, which in this case is, sexual relations with a child. I think the Brobergs are saying like, we made mistakes. Like, they aren't saying we played our hand perfectly, how dare you be in judgment of us. I think they're saying like, we really messed up.
Yeah.
We made some really bad choices. Here's where we really put our foot in it, and here's where we were manipulated into making choices that seem, beyond sanity, but are sort of trying to be very open books to say like, these are the mistakes we made. We're showing you these ugly truths so that you won't make those same mistakes. You won't stay silent. You won't stay kind of cordoned off in your silo, and so that this kind of thing happens less and less.
Once you took on the role, where did you even begin in your preparation? Because you're playing a real person. You obviously have, footage that exists you can draw from, or do you have to approach it the way you would any other character and sort of create the person you're playing?
It's tricky. Colin and I talked a bit about like grabbing at straws, that you're just like starting in the dark, and just grabbing at anything to give you any kind of starting point, something that clicks for you, that you can sort of start down a path to investigate more, and see what else is down there, or what, tributaries kind of come off of that. And so for me, it was starting with an understanding, a very rudimentary foundational understanding of manipulation practices and coercion and gaslighting, and then also Berchtold's personal documented mental health struggles, and then also just the rudimentary understanding of pedophilia, then also some silo of understanding his life and timeline, and then the third was like reading Lolita, not so much so that I could get myself to that place, but to recognize the emotional connections or wants or needs that Berchtold had, and then finding some kind of replacement for that, within myself, to make it playable for months on end. But I just think you start there and then hope to find these things. The other, we had these recordings. There's a period where Berchtold has taken Jan, and spoiler, but he's hidden her in California. He's not allowed to leave the state. He's breaking his parole. He has her hidden in California under a different name, and is telling the nuns, the sisters at this Catholic school, that he works for the CIA, and that he and President Ford are very close, and that it's at the risk of national security, they should not speak to the authorities if anyone comes looking for Jan. And he's also calling the Brobergs, saying, Jan called me, she's run away, I don't know where she is, what can we do to find her? We've got to bring her back home. She says the only way she'll come back is if we get married. And I don't want to do it, but I don't know how else to get her back. Is playing both the victim and the friend and the confidant and the detective and the loving father. And, it's like, and so we had those recordings that the FBI had used in their case against Berchtold. So I could hear his voice and the way that he, pivots from being both like an aggressor to a confidant for Marianne. And then for a while I was like really obsessing over getting his voice down. And I called Nick and Eliza Hittman directed episodes 1 and 3 and served as a producer. And I was like, his voice, my voice is this way, his voice does this. Do we want to go, do you want to do the entire thing? I can do his voice. We can do this thing. It's very melodic. And Eliza was like, I think this story has the most impact when we maybe nod to the voice, but really we see you as Berchtold and Berchtold as you.
Mm-hmm.
But the story is, can you believe that this guy who you would know and love and trust is doing these horrific things to your daughter? And the closer we can get to just you as a person, the more impactful the story will be. And so in some of this attempt to like get closer to Berchtold, there was also some amount of reckoning with the fact that I was like putting up barriers in a way, like by trying to commit to this voice, to be like, I'll commit to this really external thing so that I don't have to commit to this internal thing. And, the more we could move that stuff out of the way to be like, what's he after and what's he willing to do to get it? That's where like the meat of this thing exists. And that was kind of I hadn't been down that road before, to see like, oh, you're creating barriers. You think you're committing to something, but you're actually like throwing up walls because you don't want to get in there, but you're going to have to get in there,
Yeah. You mentioned some of the amazing ensemble. We're actually going to take a look at a clip. This is when the families first meet. Why don't we take a look now?
Okay, who wants to ring the bell?
Well, what is the Brady Bunch doing on my lawn?
That's our favorite show.
That's no surprise. You're a dead ringer for Jan.
I am Jan.
Well, pleased to meet you, Jan. You must be the patriarch. Good to meet you, Broberg. Bob Berchtold.
Nice to meet you, Bob. I'm Bob. Everybody's Bob. Are you girls a Bob?
Well, come on in, you bunch of Bobs.
Okay, it took me till halfway through the first episode to realize that was Colin Hanks.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of time that he spent in that chair, they shaved, the front half of his head and then, rebuilt these wisps and then sprayed him down. And I mean, yeah, remarkable.
Yeah.
Really incredible job from the hair and makeup team.
It is a fantastic cast. You also have Anna Paquin and McKenna Grace. Can you sort of talk about, working with this ensemble and sort of what the atmosphere on set was like? Because you are dealing with heavy material, but you also, are there for your cast members.
Yeah, I think we all early on, well, first I just think we got lucky. It's like everybody came to play ball and everybody was prepared and caring and engaged and committed. And I, with anything, that's always makes for better than worse, but particularly when there's a story and material that's sensitive, it involves kids, like there's a lot of other elements here that make a production more stressful than not, so to have everybody pulling in the same direction is like key. I felt like we had that right from the jump, which was such a gift. um Colin and I have a couple of scenes that are uh intimate, to say the least, for one of these. And he and I found a way to, like, I think we both work similarly, or at least came to that similarly, where it's like they called action and we settled in and were a part of this, and then they'd call cut and we would, like, shut the lights off and step away and be goofing off, and really to try to keep some levity, I think, and also life in it, that it's heavy material, but you also want to keep some kind of, like, spark in there and not sort of let the weight of that subject or the story or the fear and emotions that the Brobergs are going through kind of, like, weigh down these scenes. And so it's some kind of a juggling act, as to know, like, what and when and how much to kind of allow it to lift and fall. And but there's just wonderful performances, and Leo Tipton as well as Gail. That, like, the scene where she and I, where Gail and I are essentially breaking up, and Gail is trying to walk down memory lane to sort of say, like, remember when we were first together and we did these crazy things, and oh, it was so fun, Bob. And Berchtold has, I mean, he's taken Jan, he's completely left this life behind. He's emptied their bank account. He barely sees the kids. Like, he's literally living in another state, has this whole other life, and is just completely shut down to Gail. And kind of building that together was really fulfilling creatively. Sad to witness, but creatively fulfilling. Yeah, it's a wonderful cast.
We're actually going to take a look at one more clip, which is something you referenced earlier. It's the scene where it's between you and Anna Paquin, where Bob has taken her for the second time. Why don't we take a look at that?
We haven't been this close in a while, Marianne. Oh, I miss it.
All right, mate, tell me where my daughter is.
Okay. Well, you just sign this, and I'll tell you where Jan is.
You think I came here to sign a piece of paper so you can marry my daughter?
You just sign on the dotted line. Okay? We're all tired of doing this. You sign and you bring her home. Okay, you don't even have to tell Bob about it. I spoke to a new lawyer who said we can get this done with only one signature. No. No. You don't get to take this and act like it's evidence. You just sign, okay? You sign, and you end this.
Over my dead body.
Well, let's not make it come to that, Marianne.
Tell me where she is.
Fine. You don't want to sign it? I'm done talking.
You're not done talking. You're gonna tell me where she is right now.
I don't think you understand what I mean when I say I'm done talking, Marianne. What I mean is, I don't have much use for you anymore.
You won't hurt me. It doesn't mean you can't have Jan.
You're so lucky I need you alive.
Right back at you.
I'm curious because, obviously this is a very complex story. You mentioned the atmosphere on set. What did end up being the most challenging part of the role? A specific scene or just something about, accessing and staying in that character?
Hendrix Yancey, who plays Jan in the earlier years, the Birch told to purchase this trampoline, and we've had a sleepover. The Broberg kids have come over, and all the kids are sleeping outside. And Jan comes in, and Gail is in the kitchen, and Jan says, I think I had a nightmare, and then when I woke up, I must have moved around because my underwear was all twisted up. And Gail says, well, let me, get you a glass of warm milk, and we'll get you tucked in. And then I come in from outside unexplained and casual as can be, and sort of say, like, what's going on? And it's dark, it's the kitchen, it's like the hearth of the home, and then the last shot is sort of like the silhouette of myself and Gail and Jan, and my hand is on her back. And that's the first nod toward Berchtold sexually abusing Jan, that he's done it so brazenly, that he's done it at all, that it's next to his kids who are asleep on a trampoline, that he's drugged her with her own, allergy medicine, and then is so brazenly, like, just standing before his wife, and we don't know how much she does or doesn't know or suspect, as this caring father. Like, that scene was the first, like, really, it was the first scene where the reality of what he's doing and the cover story are, like, coming right up against one another for me as an actor in terms of what we shot. Prior to that, I could live in the fantasy that I'd built of, like, I'm Steve McQueen, I'm Danny Ocean, I'm Sinatra, this is a heist, like, all these things to sort of create, like, forward momentum that's free of judgment or shame or anything. And then this is the first one where it's like, I'm a father, so, like, I know what it is to care for a kid who doesn't feel well in the middle of the night, and to, like, take that most, like, intimate, vulnerable thing and then weaponize it as camouflage to, like, steal the most personal thing you could. It's, like, horrific. So I think that was the first scene, or certainly one that sticks with me, where I thought, like, I don't know if I want to do this for another 4 months. His con works for so much of our series. Like, he skates by, he gets out of jams, he like goes to jail for a total of 15 days off these charges. Like, it's just nuts. And so I think it really wasn't until I saw it cut together where you see my sort of delusional fantasy land existence, where he's continually legitimizing and justifying his actions, cut against the heartbreak and fear and loss and terror of the Brobergs, that I was like, oh, this is uncomfortable. This is bad.
And I know the real Jan Broberg was involved in the series, and I believe that she wrote you a letter before filming began.
Yeah.
Did that help access the character or give you any insight?
Yeah, she left notes for each of the cast in our trailers before we started production. And my note, the first half of it was saying, B was charming and funny and warm and gregarious and a wonderful storyteller and could cry at the drop of a hat, and that was his, like, superpower, was to be able to do that and make you feel so unique and special in his orbit. And the second half was Jan saying, like, I'm in a good place, you can just do this work. You don't have to be both prioritizing, like, playing this character, telling the story, and also thinking, is Jan okay? Are we re-traumatizing someone? Is this a problem? And she's an actor herself, and Nick Antosca has said this, but that fact and her understanding of the creative process on, like, a personal level really benefited each of us as actors, and also the production, that she understands narrative process, creative process, collaboration, when to like throw her hat in the ring and when to step back. And, like it would have been very different if the person who this happened to was then a producer and didn't know what it's like to make a 9-part limited series, what the bumps in the road are and what everybody wants and needs from this, and in order to do their job. So yeah, that note was kind of like a bit of permission that I didn't know I needed, you know, so many times, similar to I was saying, like with obsessing over this voice and being like, you can let that go, like that's a thing you don't know you're kind of putting in the way, but we can just put that to the side now. The same with Jan, was thinking like, I didn't realize I was thinking, is she going to be okay? Until she said like, you don't have to worry about whether I'm okay. And I could go, oh, okay, that's another barrier that we can put over here and go like, you don't have any choice now, man. Like you're gonna have to give over. There's nothing left to say like, yeah, but it's, yeah, it was just so generous of her to do that.
So in case someone hasn't had a chance to watch A Friend of the Family yet, what's the one thing that sort of comes to mind that might entice them to start binging the series now?
Well, I suppose there's two things. One is that this story is insane. Like if you're not familiar with this story, either from A Friend of the Family or from Abducted in Plain Sight, or, Jan and her mother, Mary Ann, self-published a book prior to the documentary. It's like, if someone wrote this and then pitched it, you'd be like, that's a little too much. It's just a little too crazy, but it happened, and our show doesn't embellish or add to the narrative. If anything, there's still pieces that we couldn't find the time and space to fit into the episodes. It's just an incredible story, and I guess we fall in the blanket of true crime because it's true, and a crime happened many times over in different ways. But I think what sort of sets this apart is that there's hope at the end of this. Jan Broberg is alive and well and thriving and living a beautiful life, and that her intention in telling her story once again, I guess, to say like, if you're a victim of abuse like this or of any kind, that can be a part of your story, but not be your entire story. That like that doesn't have to be the final chapter in your book, and rather than the way that often true crime series end with a murder and then darkness, and you think, well, that was terrifying. This ends where there's hope. Jan escapes from the grasp of Robert Berchtold, and she and her family go on to like live beautiful lives and be advocates for change and for the abused, and it's really remarkable. So, to me, those are two things that really make this maybe stand out from the crowd.
It is such a great series. I want to say thank you to our friends at Peacock and to Jake for joining us today. And to everyone watching, thank you for joining us today for this half hour with.
Thanks so much.